Our story begins here in the 1950s. England was in her post-war era. British society is reaching a turning point as the world plunges deeper into the 20th century and closer into the modern world. Colonialism and empires are left behind in the wake of the geopolitical shakeup that is the Second World War. The high tide of the British Empire, still of course a premier world power, has broken and begins to rest in its own shadow of the centuries past. I mean, of course, you still have imperialism, but you just gotta be a little more creative with it nowadays. On the home front, the collective identity of a generation that just missed the supposed glory of the Second World War is in crisis. Both in white and blue-collar men, there was this overall appetite for a masculine icon who projects all of those traits that they felt lacking in British life. Enter Ian Fleming. The author and man of style and profile released the first entry into the James Bond series in 1953 with Casino Royale. The novel was written on Fleming's GoldenEye estate on the Jamaican coastline, which is where that iconic name comes from. It was also the codename of an operation Fleming was a part of during his time as an officer in the British Naval Intelligence Division. It was his experience during that time of rubbing shoulders with the Allied powers' best spies and most dashing characters that he drew upon in crafting the grand persona of James Bond. The masculine savant satisfied every craving of this collective identity crisis. Sean Connery remarked on the traits of 007 in a pretty wild 1965 interview with Playboy magazine. Quote, his self-containment, his powers of decision, his ability to carry on until the end and to survive, end quote. And oh boy, we'll touch more on that later. In a compilation of essays published by the Amsterdam University Press titled The Cultural Life of James Bond, Spectres of 007, media historian and film studies professor Anna Everett put it this way. This post-war existential turmoil is a fractured ideological scaffold on which Fleming erected his subsequent literary fiction of super sleuth James Bond in 1952, end quote. It would then be Ian Fleming's sixth novel, Dr. No, which was adapted for the screen in 1962, likely chosen due to Jamaica being exotic enough to attract an audience while also being able to stay within the film's meager $1 million budget.
Come back to the way things used to be. Make it Jamaica again, and make it your own.
Make it Jamaica, your new island home.
Now it's time to go back to Her Majesty's Island and take a closer look at the movie that began it all in the first installment of the 007 Diaries. After the beautifully 60s psychedelic opening credits that make you feel as if you're in London's mod scene, the movie sets up for the arrival of James Bond quite nicely with some intrigue. We're shown three blind beggars walking the streets of Kingston to the tune of Three Blind Mice. Although I found these actors are truly Jamaican-born, there is not a lick of patois in this film, which is a Babylon ting. Simultaneously, we're introduced to Agent Strangways of MI6, a colleague to 007 and someone who is definitely going to die soon. After excusing himself from his game of bridge, which is a Bond series staple, I mean, come on, the first book is titled Casino Royale, Strangways crosses paths with the three blind mice who, surprise, actually got the gats on him and assassinate the suave agent. But not as suave as these cats right here. I mean, sensational drip, come on. The three dope boys in a hearse then head on over to Agent Strangway's place to tie up some loose ends, killing his secretary and retrieving some files on their way out labeled with the cryptic Dr. No. Look at British fashion right here at its peak. I can respect knit ties, browline glasses frames, and a nice cardigan. Truly, truly a time. As the lens falls backwards over Sean Connery's shoulder, face hidden, the mystery man plays his hand confidently against a striking Mademoiselle. Baccarat, or Baccarat Chemin de Fer for you francophones out there, is Bond's game of choice as seen in so many other 007 entries. The dialogue between him and the Mademoiselle is noir-like, slick and back and forth, threaded with innuendo and romantic tension. Just look at how she alley-oops this line to him, creating one of the series' most iconic one-liners.
I admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
This also makes Sylvia Trench the first ever Bond girl.
Sounds tempting. May I, let you know in the morning?
Splendid. My number's on the card.
Aight, Bond, we're just going for style points now. There is no HR presence at MI6. I mean, who greets their secretary like this? It's a Babylon thing. Despite the Mad Men office etiquette, here's another example of slick dialogue that's straight from the pages of Raymond Chandler, who Ian Fleming was actually close friends with, by the way.
What gives?
Me, given an ounce of encouragement. You never take me to dinner looking like this, James. You never take me to dinner, period.
I would, you know. Only Anne would have me court-martialed for illegal use of government property.
Flattery will get you nowhere, but don't stop trying. Now.
So now we see Bond get his first mission on the big screen. M, the cryptic title of the chief of MI6, sends 007 down to Jamaica to investigate the missing Agent Strangways, who was looking into some missile interference on behalf of the Americans. But we really know what happened to him. This is also where Bond gets his famous Walther PPK sidearm, with M tossing aside his personal Beretta for some German engineering instead.
Walter PPK, 7.65 mil with a delivery like a brick through a plate glass window. Takes a Brausch silencer with very little reduction in muzzle velocity. The American CIA swear by them.
Thank you, Major Boothrider.
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.
Truly, nobody ever wears seatbelts in this movie. 007 arrives in Kingston and already dispatches a group of assassins on his trail. He links up with his contact at the State House, and you can start to really get that colonial feel. Definitely not a regime administered by its own people. Even Superintendent Duff is racially ambiguous enough that you can tell they tried to pass him off as kinda brown. But seriously, I can't find any information on the actor that played him to say what he really is. William Foster Davis seems to have Dr. No as his only credit, and any personal details are scarce. The film does pay a good level of attention to details that you may not notice on your first viewing. Well, this one's a little more obvious. James Bond doesn't sip the martini initially, sniffing it for poison first. And when James Bond goes to visit the Strangways estate, if you take a look in the far background on the left-hand side, you can actually see the 3 blind mice assassins just checking things out. Anxious, fidgeting, blaming it on the secretary. Yeah, this is the face of a man who is not innocent. Bond's search leads him to Strangway's fishing boat captain, Coral. Not a lick of patois in his accent, but we can let that slide considering the material he was given to work with. Not the most articulate, always one step behind, a childlike fear of local folklore.
You see, there's a dragon.
What? Native superstition. Started by Dr. No, probably.
And always there in servitude to the white man.
Fetch my shoes.
These are all the makings of early film's go-to racial archetyping. The American actor himself actually has a legacy worth noting. John Kitzmiller earned his degree in chemical engineering and served in Italy during World War II. He met a pair of Italian filmmakers on a chance encounter while playing cards at an officers' club. He became an accomplished actor of more than 50 European films and earned Best Actor at the 1957 Cannes Film Festival, the first black actor to ever do so. It's also ironic that the movie he won that award for is a nuanced depiction of different peoples coming together during wartime and shedding notions of race and national origin. But here, he's Coral. That's a Babylon thing. With the help of Coral and a CIA agent in double indemnity ladies' glasses, Ian Fleming did have a thing for portraying Americans as decadent. Bond gains a lead on the missile interference Strangways was looking into. Crab Key Island and Dr. No, both the names in the file stolen earlier.
I've got to get a crab key.
I can't take you. You know the procedure, sir.
Look, there's no time for procedure now. I'll take responsibility. Come on.
Man, I hope you know what you're doing.
Come on.
All right, wind up.
Okay, there we go. A little bit of a Jamaican accent. The introduction of the first ever on-screen Bond villain is teased and built to with tension, just as it was for James Bond himself in the beginning of the movie, albeit in a much more ominous tone. This is the echoing voice of Emperor Palpatine speaking to a kneeling Vader before there was Star Wars.
Why have you disobeyed my strictest rule and come in daylight?
I had to. Bond came to see me this morning.
Yes, I know. I gave orders that he should be killed. Why is he still alive?
What is thy bidding, my master?
There is a great disturbance in the Force.
And while we're at it with possible inspirations for George Lucas, let's talk about how similar the tarantula assassination attempt on Bond is with the centipede-like creatures sent to kill Padme in Episode 2 on Coruscant. He outdrives the three blind mice hot on his trail in a hearse, which also must have had tuned suspension and like a reinforced chassis, because there's no way it's taking those sandy corners that well without some understeer, just a little bit.
How did it happen? I think they were on their way to a funeral.
When Bond finally meets up with the vaguely Asian secretary who's really a spy for Dr. No, we start to really see where Jamie Boyd crosses the line from womanizer to predator.
Please.
Oh, forgive me. I thought I was invited up here to admire the view. I feel one of us should answer it.
And by the way, it's no surprise to report that British actress, Zena Marshall, not in the slightest bit Asian in real life. Not quite as bad as John Wayne's Genghis Khan. That's a Babylon thing. Now this brings me back to that Sean Connery Playboy interview that I mentioned earlier. While speaking to them on the subject of hitting women, they had this exchange. I'll just leave that there, let you be the judge of that one. So after 007 gets to have his cake and eat it too, he takes care of our guilty little friend from earlier, a geologist who hid Strangway's discovery of radioactive samples found on Dr. No's Crab Key Island, which is the next destination on the itinerary for Bond.
Stay where you are.
I can assure you my intentions are strictly honorable.
Yeah, sure they are. Say what you want about the man, but damn, that's how you wear a polo. And can we talk about how hard it is to have the Walther hanging out the back pocket like that? I mean, it's a good look. This is also the start of the long-running gag of Bond girls having names that function as sexual innuendos and double entendres. The French mademoiselle from earlier by the name of Sylvia Trench, it's a bit of a stretch, but Honey Rider, definitely the creativity of a 70s porn star. The trio stealth their way through Dr. No's island and soon confront Quarrel's silly little native superstitions of a dragon on the island, which in fact was really just a painted tank armed with a flamethrower. Rip my nigga Quarrel, for real. After getting captured by the dragon and taken back to Dr. No's facility, 0069 God is at it again.
72.8. Not soaked into their clothes.
All right, then.
Take off all your clothes.
What's he going to do?
Do as he says. We picked up some radioactive contamination. Do the girl first.
And my man is truly just enjoying his shower, feeling the steam, the suds, letting the hot water run through his hair, not thinking about his impending confrontation with Dr. No. No. Just straight vibes. It's cute that Dr. No built his multi-million-dollar nuclear black site with a room perfect for a putt-putt golf course. The first Bond villain we ever see on screen was really living out of a Sleeping Tiger imports. There's actually some interesting trivia behind Dr. No's lair from legendary production designer Ken Adams. He shared they obviously couldn't afford a wall-sized aquarium, so they used a projector for the image of the fish, but when the only stock footage they could find were of goldfish-sized fish, they had to blow up the image and throw in this line to explain why it looks so weird.
The glass is convex, 10 inches thick, which accounts for the magnifying effect.
And then just a little bit later, James Bond walks by this painting before stopping to take a deeper look. The painting's titled The Portrait of the Duke of Wellington by Francisco Goya, which was stolen in 1961 by a disgruntled English bus driver in an act of protest. The replica, shown here, and actually painted by Ken Adams himself, was shown as an in-joke that Dr. No was the one who stole the Goya in the in-world Bond universe. After all the teasing that the film has built to, we finally get a little one-on-one time with Dr. Julius No. He He represents an apolitical villain, one that's motivated by personal vendetta rather than ideology. These shades of gray allow for some more room with the writing rather than pigeonholing him to an anti-communist plot. He refers to himself as the unwanted child of a German missionary and a Chinese girl of a good family, but French-Canadian. Like, not even close. Just like our old pal, Miss Taro from earlier, the secretary, he's vaguely Asian, I'll give you that. They think they're doing something with the Chairman Mao haircut there. Although they do say he's only partly Chinese, you can't deny the casting has this thing for racial ambiguity throughout the movie. As James Bond tunnels through the vents, you can see some imagery that may have inspired a little bit of Die Hard. A little bit of Luke Skywalker on Cloud City. Here, Agent 007 starts to tap into his Agent 47 shit, stealing the hazmat suit from one of Dr. No's engineers. He then sabotages Dr. No's missile interference program by cranking this dial mad hard. And there we go. As Bond and Dr. No's fight spills over to the platform above the boiling water, it's Dr. No's prosthetic hands, product of failed experiments, that do him in. Utter devotion to his craft, his fatal flaw. The sabotage of Dr. No's machine sets off a chain reaction of explosions, but just enough time for James Bond to grab Honey Rider and make a quick escape out. Where did your pants go? The British ensign flying proud over Jamaican waters, a fitting end to a Babylon film. Although Dr. No and the other early James Bond films pay little attention to cultural nuance or have dated depictions of race and women, it's still important to appreciate the James Bond films for what they are, to not lose sight of that. And critiques and analysis aside, that's my thesis with the 007 Diaries. When the Playboy writer was speaking to Sean Connery, he asked him this question, quote, "While conceding that Bond's adventures are entertaining, they denounce him as a caricature of sex appeal and his erotic exploits as impossibly far-fetched. Do you feel that's valid?" He replied, "The main concern for an actor or a writer is not believability, but the removal of time as I see it. Because I really think the only occasions you really are enjoying yourself, being happy, swinging as they say, are when you don't know what time it is. When you're totally absorbed in a play, a film, or a party and you don't know what time it is or how long it has been going on, then you'll usually find there's contentment and happiness. When an artist can suspend time like that for an audience, he has succeeded. It doesn't really matter, I think, whether it is believable or not. The believability comes afterward, or it doesn't. If you want to question it afterward, that's up to you. But the writer's and the actor's job is to remove time while you're still in the book or the theater. That's exactly what Fleming achieved for millions of readers, and that's what I've tried to achieve in the Bond films. I'm The Source. Thank you for watching.